Anant, you can start.
Sure. Hari Om. Jai SiyaRam. A very good evening to everyone. We have an exciting session planned for today, and we will now have our invocation prayer.
सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः।
समस्त जन कल्याणे निरतं करुणामयं नमामि चिन्मयं देवं सद्गुरुं ब्रह्मविद्वरम्।
रघुपति राघव राजा राम पतित पावन सीताराम। रघुपति राघव राजा राम पतित पावन सीताराम। सुंदर
Thank you, everyone. Hari Om and a warm welcome again to everyone. Our topic for discussion today is the Ram Mandir and Hindu Resurgence. So, how long have you persevered for something? Now, let's just expand that from the individual you to a civilization. For how long do you think a civilization can keep a movement running? Now, how about half a millennium? That's about 500 years. So, the Hindu people simply did not give up for those 500 years, and rightfully so. Sri Ram, the Maryada Purushottam, and the sacred space where he lived, Sri Ram Janmabhoomi, is going to be at the center of our discussion today. Among other things, our speakers will be covering why the Sri Ram Mandir at Ayodhya is so important. It is indeed an honor to introduce the speakers for today, who don't need much introduction anyways. Swami Mithrananda, a direct disciple of Gurudev Swami Chinmaya ji, has been associated with the Chinmaya mission from a very young age and is the mentor of Chinmaya mission Chennai. The publisher of Chinmaya Udghosh, an international youth magazine, founder of Chinmaya Academy of Management and the Chinmaya Academy for Civil Services, Swamiji is a creative writer, a daring adventurer, and a vigilant administrator. Having extensively traveled across 35 countries to impart the wisdom of the Gita, Upanishads, and other Vedantic texts, he initiated a movement called the Youth Empowerment Program and has trained over 600 youngsters across the world to serve Indian knowledge traditions in urban and rural India. His innovative methodology of teaching, logical interpretations of ancient Hindu philosophy has made him very popular globally and especially with the youth. Our second speaker for the day is going to be Pandit Vamadeva Shastri ji. Pandit Vamadeva ji is the recipient of the prestigious Padma Bhushan Award, the third highest civilian award granted by the Government of India for distinguished service of a higher order to the nation, honoring his work and writings as a Vedic teacher. A rare Doctor of Letters, the highest educational title possible in the field of yoga and Vedic sciences from Swami Vivekananda Yoga Anusandhana Samsthana, and a second Doctor of Letters from Ram Manohar Lohia Awadh University in Ayodhya. Vamadeva ji is the director of the American Institute of Vedic Studies. In India, Vamadeva ji's translations and interpretations of the ancient Vedic teachings have been acclaimed in both spiritual and scholarly circles. Vamadeva ji has been one of the main pioneers in introducing Ayurvedic medicine to the West, as well as Jyotisha, Yoga, and Vedanta. It is indeed my pleasure to welcome both our speakers for the day. Our format for the day: Swami Mithrananda ji will begin the proceedings and speak for 20 minutes, followed by Vamadeva ji for 20 minutes. We will then have an interaction between Swamiji and Vamadeva ji for another 20 minutes, followed by a Q&A session. Now, over to a quick introduction by Swami Swatananda ji.
Hari Om, Pujya Swami Mithrananda ji and Pandit Vamadeva Shastri ji. My salutations to both of you and to everyone here. Indeed an honor to have both of you here to share on this very important topic about Sri Ram Mandir and the cultural resurgence that we want to happen. As Anand said, many centuries we have waited. Many people have given sacrifices for this mandir. And our generation is fortunate to be able to see this mandir going to manifest in a few years from now. The work has already started for it. Pujya Gurudev, Swami Chinmaya ji, had written a letter on 9th November 1990 to a devotee, assuring him that the temple would be built. And how wonderful it is that the vision of the great master finally fructifies in the judgment that Supreme Court gave on 9th November in 2019. Think about this. The Sankalpa, one of the names of Pujya Gurudev is Satya Sankalpaya Namaha. He lived committing himself to the Hindu cause, started by saying, let us be Hindus, and converting Hindus to Hinduism was his core vision. And I'm just going to share that letter here. Gita Gnan Yajna in Lagos in November 9th, 1990. Puja Gurudev has written to a person in Guntur, and he says, blessed self, Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om, salutations. Your kind letter of the 29th was waiting for me in Bombay, and I brought it here. Don't become so sentimental. After 1,500 years of neglect, when we strive to revive our culture, we must pay its price. How many monkeys died in the Ram Ravan war? We will build the temple and you will see its inauguration with Prem and Om, thy own self, Chinmaya. See how much conviction that Gurudev had and what is the value for that sacrifice. And 1,500 years he says that. Just imagine what it is to sustain the movement for 1,500 years and how many innumerable people have continuously given their time, effort, sacrifices for this to happen. So more about the importance of this, I request Swami Mithrananda to please guide us.
Namaskar. Samasta jana kalyane niratham karunamayam namami chinmayam devam sadgurum brahmavitvaram. My salutations to Vamadeva ji, Swatmananda, and to everyone present. Pranam. Anant, am I audible?
Yes, Swamiji.
Thank you. Building a place of worship is a right for every religion. Every religion has a right to build a place for their worship. Demolishing a temple which was built to put another religion on top of it is unacceptable, non-negotiable. It need not be Ram Mandir alone. In general, place to worship is a right to every religion, and we should coexist that way. But if a person comes and demolishes one of your places of worship and puts up another one over it, that cannot be acceptable. And this is what happened. And this happened 500 years ago, and we could not bring it back till date. And in the recent time, things have changed. And in few years, we will see this magnificent temple coming up. This is basic human rights, that my forefathers built a beautiful temple, and it is dedicated to Lord Ram, and we worship Lord Ram across the country, and that cannot be demolished and forced. This is history. After demolishing, rebuilding again. This is what they tried in Somnath. For those of you who do not know the history of Somnath, Ghazni started it, and every time he came, he destroyed that particular Somnath temple with an only desire that to the theology what he belongs or what he believes has no room for idol worship. If you believe in idol or you do not believe in idol, you have no right over somebody else. But if you think that you can impose your ideas over others, this is inhuman. This is not human rights. A human has a right to fight for his own rights. Here, Ghazni came, destroyed Somnath, and he went. People built it again. He heard that this temple was built again. He came back. He wants to destroy it again. Did it again. Again, the Hindus built. This went on 6 times. Please imagine, every time he invades this country, someone comes, invades my country, destroys my temple, and loots everything and goes away. And whatever is left, our people of faith built it again. You come back again and you destroy? Because you had might, we were weak at that time. So you did. For you, might was right. For us, right is might. Satyam is truth, not might. That's why we won it now. So it was destroyed and rebuilt 6 times. And you have to know Something, this is India, this is Hindu sentiment. In one of the visits when Ghazni broke Somnath temple and he was taking the loot, gold, wealth, various things, but the door of the temple, of Somnath temple, when Ghazni's troops reached Punjab to move further away from India, when they reached Punjab, the Punjabs there fought a war only to retrieve the doors, saying, you take the rest what you want, but those doors leave it to us, because it is Somnath door, we don't want you to take it and go. This is the Lord, we worship Shiva, we want the door. That door was retrieved. A battle happened for the door. They won the battle, got the doors. Do you know where the door is now? Golden Temple. When you enter Golden Temple, you see that is the door which the soldiers fought at that time. This is the sentiment. Because Ghazni was obsessed to be known in the history that he destroyed idols. But no, we rebuilt it again. We rebuilt it again. After independence, India, when India got independent, immediately Sardar Patel got into action and got this done. At that time only we should have done all other temples too. But somehow for different reasons, we were still not together. We had difference of opinions and we left it. But somewhere in late 80s, this momentum once again picked up. In 90s, it picked up even more, early 90s. And then there was a national awakening. Remember, friends, it's very difficult for us to come together because we have various languages, ethnic differences, various things. It is the Veda which connected us as one. Jambu Dvipa, Bharata Kande, this was one nation. It was through Vedic heritage we were one nation. There were so many ethnic differences, but we could not come together. Ram is not a regional God. What do you mean regional God, universal God? Please understand. If I tell you Dharmasastha, what do you know about Dharmasastha? Who is Dharmasastha? People living in Kerala will know Ayyappa is Dharmasastha. Shabarimala. Recently, Shabarimala became popular to rest of the country. Otherwise, they were not connected with Shabarimala. Only people living in the south, mainly Kerala, was deeply connected. So Ayyappa is more of a regional sentiments. Srinath ji in Rajasthan. You ask people in Tamil Nadu, Srinath ji, they will not identify. He is a regionally popular sentiment there. For the people living in Tamil Nadu, they may not know what is Srinath ji. It was locally popular deity. Like Ayyappa was popular in one region. Vaishnav Devi. How many people will know in different parts of India? Or some temple in Bengal, Tripureshwari in Tripura. The sentiment is not identified with the rest of the country. But Rama, Shiva, Vishnu, Krishna, Saraswati, Durga, Lakshmi, these are identified nationally across the our continent and across the globe today. Hindu diasporas all around the world. These are identified. And the invader chose one of, not a regional deity, but one of the mainstream deity where the Indians identified, Hindus identified. He decided knock that down. That will give them the fear. And he knocked it down and built a mosque dedicated to his friend called Babri. And this mosque was built. And we could not do anything because they had the power. They thought might was right and we were broken. We need to come together. Sometimes there were great Mahatmas who came, brought people together. Sometimes a good cause brought people together. In the recent time, it is Ram which brought the nation together because that structure was standing there as an insult. Insult to our culture. Why? Because somebody with all faith built it, your own forefathers. They built it with all faith. So once my forefather has built something, I have a duty to respect. That is called Pitru Yajna. Respecting my forefathers, their sentiments. We were not bothered. We want to do it, but we didn't have the power. It went on. But Ram brought people together. That's why on 9th November, when this was announced by Supreme Court, I was touring for my lectures in Philippines. I got a call from Ajit Doval's office, and later followed by Gurumurti ji in Chennai. They called me and said, can you come down quickly? We would like to have a meeting day after tomorrow. I said, I have to cancel some program. They said, please do it and come. So I canceled, and 2 days later, we had a meeting in Delhi in Ajit Doval's house. Muslim heads, clergies, different mullahs, etc. And some of the Hindu sadhus, we met together. We had a discussion. And the discussion was, now that the Supreme Court is the highest body in India, it has given a clear verdict that there was a temple existing. Archaeological evidence is there. Science has proved it. History has proved it. And it has to be accepted gracefully. You leaders, please inform your people that Supreme Court is the highest in the country and we are living here. This is not Darul Islam. This is Bharat. So here, our court is the highest. Please convey this to your people. And they were also very willingly, very forthcoming. They said, we'll do it. And we also told them that we will not overtly celebrate this verdict. It came to us after 500 years. Those who have sacrificed, who know its value, somebody in their family was sacrificed for it. Lots of death happened. So many people were imprisoned sometime fighting for this. Those who have sacrificed must be waiting. The families must be waiting to celebrate. But we told them, we will slow it down. This is not the time to celebrate because the news has just come. This should not create fiction. So we told the Muslim leaders saying, we will tell our youth, we will tell our people that we will not overtly celebrate it. And you tell them, we are living in India and Supreme Court is the highest. And what comes out through Supreme Court has to be accepted. But this idea of Ram brought people together. And once that verdict was announced, and then when the Bhumi Puja happened on 5th of August, Vamadeva ji, I was in Ayodhya, and that was the day you and I had a session. And again, we are meeting again on Ram only. You and I are talking today together on Ram. That day too, we shared the dais on Ram, but that day I was talking from Ayodhya. I just remembered that there is something between you and me and Ram. We should do a seminar probably in Ayodhya sometime soon. So we were there and it was such a beautiful event, the Bhumi Puja. And the people were, the 60, 70 sons were there, maximum, because due to various virus-infected controls, lockdowns and all that, 60, 70 saints were there. And all of us went to the place where the puja was done, took that mud and we were putting it in our forehead. Everybody felt. Now, this is the sentiment which was there that time. And once the fund collection started, can you imagine thousands of crores of rupees coming in 21 days, 28 days, and they have to finally say, it's okay, now we have got you, relax now, don't have to push forward. That is the sentiment everybody accepted, not just Hindus. People from other communities also accepted it. So Ram brought us together. See, being united is very important because united, we stay together as strong people. Strength, as Abdul Kalam always said, strength respects strength. If we don't have strength, we have to wait for 500 years to build a temple because we were weak. And we took the legal route to get there. And once we got it, we have done. Now, that's how Ram brought us together. So this is a it is not just a temple being built. It is the history rewritten, wiping off the mistakes of the past. This is what my Guru, Swami Chinmaya said. On Ayodhya, he said that. He appealed before all the conflict could happen. He appealed to the Muslims, late 80s, this was. He appealed to the Muslims saying, please come forward. You built the temple for us. This is the offer. And he spoke to the then Prime Minister too, saying, ask the Muslim brothers to come and do this. If they built the temple, we show universal brotherhood to the world. Because your forefathers made a mistake and you have wiped it clean. Have we not done some of the mistakes our forefathers made? Have we not paid a price for it and wiping that mistake till date? Please imagine the caste and the mistakes which happened through caste. How much we have paid? We are trying to wipe out some mistake made by the past, our own people, and we are trying to rectify it. Similarly, he said, you do it and the world can see. We will build a mosque for you somewhere nearby. You build this temple for us. This is what he said. This is called coexistence. But that time the Prime Minister was not interested in it. Then Prime Minister in 80s was not showing any interest much in this kind of thing. And later we have to take another route to get it. But this is the vision of coexistence. Please remember, this is very important what I'm telling you, and let's not have a doubt on this. If we don't have the drive to reclaim what we have lost, we will not have the inspiration to sustain what we have. Let's be clear about it. Let's not have another doubt on this. If we don't have the drive to reclaim what we have lost, we will not have the inspiration to sustain what we have. That means we will only shrink, shrink, shrink. Do you know Akhanda Bharat? What was the size of Akhanda Bharat? And to what we have come today. The land lost is much more than the land retained. Shrunk. If we don't have the drive to reclaim, we will not be able to sustain, we will go. Please remember, otherwise what would have happened to Kashmir? Almost on the verge of giving away, we could get it back. The drive to reclaim should be there. Similarly to our temples, 47,000 temples were destroyed and another place of worship was made over it. This is not acceptable. Okay, at that time you had power. You thought right is might. Might is right. That's your philosophy. You thought means doesn't matter. End is important. Means doesn't matter because those people saw us always as a theological enemy. Because their theology has enemies. The theology believes only in one book and every other person is their enemy. This theology is dangerous to the world, which swears by one and rejects the rest. And not just rejects the rest, looks at the rest as their enemy. Hinduism is not that. Hinduism respects every path. Hinduism respects coexistence. And coexistence is something which was very natural to us. We coexisted. Therefore, people who invaded came, converted some of our people. We allowed, we gave them space. Okay, you have your temple here, you have your church here, you have your mosque. We allowed because we always believed in coexistence. But believing in coexistence is not being subservient. That anybody can come and kick and anybody can do anything. And we accept that is not correct. So you need an idol to bring the entire nation together. And luckily this era, this age, it was Ram, the man of Treta Yuga, brought us once again together. And this is the resurgence. The mighty power, the power of right, not just the might, the power of right came together. Ayodhya is going to be a beautiful destination for us in India and for the world. I recently met, I have been there many times when the other structure was existing. I was there, I have visited it, and when it was demolished, and now when the foundation stone happened, I was there. Even after that, recently, a few months back, I was there, met few trustees, told them some of the ideas, and one of it they really appreciated, which they are planning to implement in the temple, is to have 108 pillars in the temple where we do parikrama. Each pillar will have one name of Ram. Maybe from Nama Ramayan, Shuddha Brahma Paratpara Ram, one pillar. Kalatmaka Parameshwara Ram, another pillar. And this name will be in all Indian languages. And not just Indian languages, some of the languages of the Far East Asian countries where Ramayana is absolutely popular. Japan, Indonesia, Lagos, Cambodia, Vietnam, Thailand, Bali, Sri Lanka, Singapore, Malaysia. Some of these languages also we can have. So each pillar will have some 30, 40, 30, 35 languages, Asian languages and Indian languages, one name of Ram. So when we do a parikrama of it, you cover 108 names, but each language represents, because Ram was a universal God. He was a national hero. He brought it, and this is the resurgence. We have come together. The power of togetherness will achieve wonderful things. Remember, strength respects strength. We did not use our might. We used the path of right. For a Hindu, means is as important as the end. We will not compromise on the means. We will not go out of dharma for the whatever we want. So means is important. Right is might. We followed that satyam, and then we got there. In the name of Ram, the nation came together. This togetherness will be a cultural revival. And a beautiful city coming there. Nationally, it will be a Tirtha Yatra. For Asian countries, it will be a place to visit. And the plans which the government and few others have discussed looks like it will be an international city. We'll discuss about it more. Now I stop and I look forward to listen to Vamadeva ji. Over to Swatmananda.
Thank you, Swamiji. We invite Vamadeva ji.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Vamadeva.
Little louder.
Okay. First of all, I'm very happy to be with you. This is a wonderful series of events and a very important topic that we are addressing here now. And I also want to thank Swami Mithrananda, who, according to his name, is also my friend, he's already addressed many of the most important issues. So I want to go over this topic. It has been very close to me and very dear to me. I was in India in December 1992 by chance. Of course, I visit quite a lot. And I experienced the sentiment. I experienced what was going on there. I had many friends involved in that. I have kept up with the Ram Mandir issue over the years. I've been a close associate of Professor B.B. Lal, who was the director of the Archaeological Survey of India that also excavated the Ram Mandir. And I've watched it all along. I was there in the court ruling some years ago from the High Court. And I was in Ayodhya in 2019 for Diwali, just before the court decision, with my friend Manoj Dixit from Ram Manohar Loya Ayodhya University, of which I've been involved with. The students had put together and lit over several, I don't know how many lakhs of diyas at that date, and we participated in the lighting and the whole event. And also, I've kept up with it since then. And I have been a Vedic scholar for many years. And one thing we must remember is that Ayodhya is the most sacred and ancient of the 7 cities of the Hindus. So it's not just Ayodhya, and it's not just Sri Ram, it is also Ayodhya. And Ayodhya had many great kings, Dasharat, Raghu. It had many mentioned even in Vedas, Trasadasyu, Mandata, Sagara. Even Krishna says in the Gita that he gave the yoga teachings to Manu and then to Ikshwaku, who also founded, of course, the Surya Vamsha, or the solar dynasty that ruled from Ayodhya, particularly Ayodhya as the capital of the kingdom of Kosala. So Ayodhya has a very important role in itself. And Sri Ram is representing Ayodhya overall in that whole Vedic tradition. He was also trained by the families of the great gurus Vasishta and Vishwamitra. Vedas call Ayodhya Devanam Pur Ayodhya. So it's known even to the most ancient Vedic text. And of course, even in the Mahabharata, Hanuman is the insignia for Arjuna and for their chariot. And that tradition has gone on. And Ram, who is Ram? Ram is the avatar of Dharma. He is the Ram Raja, is the ideal rule of Dharma. It's not a rule of politics, not of the right or the left or whatever the modern mind has created. It is the universal rule of Dharma. It is not simply a rule of human laws. It is a rule of the law of karma and respect for oneself or Atman in all beings. So Ram became the ideal king and the representative Ramaraja of this whole Bharatiya tradition. So naturally, a foreign invader wanting to assert power would like to take control of Ayodhya and also remove any Ram Mandir. Of course, many mandirs were removed before that point. Why? Because in Bharat, the mandir was the symbol of the culture, the civilization, the religion, and showed to the people the way to connect with the higher forces, the devas. So intolerant invaders would naturally want to remove that to assert their personal power and that of their particular beliefs. So many temples were destroyed that we know. And there were efforts to rebuild many of them. Not only Somnath, many of the other temples were rebuilt and also taken down again, even Kashi. And so the Ram Mandir in Ayodhya was the symbol of India at that time of when Babur came. And that was their way of asserting power. So it was not a religious act of piety. It was an act of politics and intolerance. And it was not an honoring of the traditions. The Hindus and even all the related Dharmic peoples there supported the Ram movement. That began. There were wars, there were fighting, there was attempts to reclaim all the way over the 500 years. And I should mention that Sri Ram is also honored by the Buddhists. They see him as a Pratyeka Buddha, another Buddha manifestation. And so he's honored throughout Asia. In fact, Akhanda Bharat, or Greater Bharat, goes as far as Indonesia, Philippines, influenced China, Japan, went into Central Asia. So that movement continued, and it was naturally thought in 1949 that the Ram Mandir would come back to the Hindus. But a political fact happened. Under British rule, the Hindu sentiments were not honored. Under Mughal rule, the Hindu sentiments were not honored. And sadly, when Nehru took power, they decided not to honor the Hindu sentiments either. Now, let us compare this with other countries. Many countries in the Balkans, like Bulgaria, Romania, Hungary, parts of Greece, etc., when they became free of Turkish rule, they established their own churches again, and they removed the a lot of the examples of Turkish rule. Hindus couldn't do that because they didn't have that mandate from the government. And I also want to tell you that Saudi Arabia has removed every Turkish-built mosque in the country, regardless of the fact that they are mosques, because for them, they were also a symbol of foreign rule. So unfortunately, at that moment when these temples should have been reclaimed and everyone would have accepted it, for political reasons, it wasn't done. So the Ram movement then developed and continued. It took power again. It became notable again in the 1980s. And it now has become a fulfilled promise. And because of the striving of all the groups involved, some people say, oh, but it was a political movement. Frankly, you have to realize that today we live in an age of politics. If you don't have a political expression, you will not have a legal expression, you will not have an economic expression, and you will not have a religious expression. For example, in most of the countries of the world, including many countries in Europe, even Russia, Hinduism is not recognized as a legal religion. And because of that, Hindu marriage is not legal. Hindu institutions have difficulty being built. So legality is very important. And Hindus are politically and have been politically the least assertive of all the religions of the world. I'll give you an example. You can go to different countries of the world. You will find hundreds of lobbyist groups for Islam, for Judaism, for Christianity, even for the Sikhs. There's only one Hindu lobbyist group outside of India, the Hindu American Foundation. And the idea that Hindus shouldn't vote, the fact is all the other groups are voting. If you don't vote, then you will not have a place in the political world. What does Islam do? Anytime any Islamic cause for their point of view is not honored, they all gather together and they have political protest. And that naturally has certain results. Even though the Hindus have been the most peaceful, the most affluent, educated diaspora immigrant group in the United States, UK, and other places, because they haven't taken a political voice, their causes are also seldom given any attention at all. And while the depiction of Islam has changed radically in universities in America over the last several decades, the depiction of Hinduism has not changed from the colonial era, with some exceptions here and there, because the Hindu voice has not been strong enough and assertive enough. So politics is part of the world today. Computers are there, smartphones are there. You have to adjust to that. Media is part of the world today. Hindus did not take their cause to the media. Muslims took their cause to the media. So even a group that practiced terrorism got more respect than a group that was peaceful, because they didn't take their message to the media as to why these things happened and to what was going on. And even in India, academia and media tried to prevent the Ram Janmabhoomi movement, and even certain political parties were against it, particularly those on the left, not because of the legalities involved, but because they didn't want a Hindu revival to interfere with their political power at the particular time. So it's very important to recognize these factors and give them their place. And now we have certain objections, why don't you build hospitals instead? Why don't you do charities? Do we need another temple? Why is it there are no major Ram temples in North India of the ancient or even the medieval or even of 100 years or more? Because they were destroyed. Why were they destroyed? Because of the message they gave to the people. Hindus took the case to the British in the 19th century, and the British said, oh, it was too long ago. So even though a great wrong was occurred, we can't rectify it today. So Ayodhya is the most sacred of the cities of the Hindus and of India, even for other groups, the most ancient. And also Sri Ram is the symbol, the icon, not only of India and India, Bharat, but even also throughout South Asia, Indonesia, all these countries. And so honoring that should be part of a new India, awakened India, and an independent India. So what does this mean? That a Ram Mandir and a reawakened and a rebuilt Ayodhya are essential for the identity continuity of Bharat, its international influence, and Ayodhya can easily be the most important cultural, spiritual, and religious pilgrimage center in India, not only a center for temples and museums, but for learning and study, for bringing people from all over the world. In fact, within hour's drive of where I live, we have a Hanuman temple. There are Ram temples in the United States. There's the name of Ram throughout the Yoga Vedanta movements. And again, Bali, Indonesia is there. So Ayodhya can be a coming together of the Dharmic traditions and the following of Dharma overall. And it can be a great celebration because it's not against anyone. And there was no real spiritual necessity for removing it. And it's the Hindus' right to restore their major temples, at least. Again, all the other countries who removed themselves from foreign rule restored their ancient traditions and their ancient temples, churches, whatever it is that they had. India did not, even though it had the oldest traditions, the largest temples, and even though the people had been fighting for these, the Marathas restored many temples throughout India, including, I think, the Mahakal in Ujjain. Also, they began the restoration of Kashi Vishwanath. So this temple rebuilding movement began before the modern India in 1947. And let us be totally clear, India is not just a modern nation state from 1947. It is a great culture. It is the world's oldest, most vast, and most diverse civilization. Its heritage as a civilization and culture needs to be reclaimed for all of humanity. Throughout the world, Native traditions are being honored again, whether it's Native American, African, and related teachings beyond that. These we have to recognize. And these ancient traditions, Hinduism is the world's oldest tradition. It's the largest of the non-Abrahamic traditions. It holds the heritage of the native indigenous traditions throughout the world. And it holds great teachings for humanity. Yoga, Ayurveda have spread globally. Vedanta has spread globally. These need to be honored inside of Bharat as well. Ayodhya is the ideal place for that. Ram is the ideal symbol for that. Even in Vedanta, what are the great Vedantic works? The Yoga Vasishta, Ramayana, Adhyatma, Ramayana. And of course, Ram is also the great symbol of devotion. Tulsidas Ramayana went throughout Bharat after they had taken the temple down, the name of Ram continued. The story of Ram continued. And this great inspiration continues. An ability to endure for 500 years, to hold devotion, to endure foreign rule, to endure even your own country taking on ideologies against your own civilization. So it's a great victory of Dharma, and it is a great foundation on which to build a new Bharat, on which to awaken the ancient Bharat, on which to bring together all the peoples of Asia, Indo-Pacific, and the entire world. Hindu avatars are not exclusive figures to be opposed to other teachers and traditions. It is the tradition of self-realization, universal realization, recognition of one reality, unity consciousness, universality, oneself in all beings. And this is all symbolized by Sri Ram. So let us welcome the new Ayodhya, the new Ram Janmabhoomi, and make it into a beauty, a wonder, a teaching center, a place of inspiration for all of humanity, for the past and for the future. So with these words, I will close my talk and we can go on with our dialogue. Jai Shri Ram, but not as something to exclude, as something to awaken Ram, Dharma, Atma in all of us. Hari Om.
Hari Om, Jai SiyaRam. Anand, should I take on?
Yes,
start
Swamiji,
the
you
dialogue?
can take
Right.
over from here.
Vamadeva ji, thanks for being with us. Thanks for those beautiful insights. When I travel abroad, when I go outside India, many a times I go meet the Indian ambassador, just over a cup of tea, just to meet him to discuss. In most of the places I used to talk, and my dialogue with them would always be that how many students from India come here every year to study? You say, oh, among the world, you see Indians are the maximum. I said, how many people go out and graduate maximum? He said, Indians are the maximum. How many graduate, postgraduate? Indians are the maximum. PhD, he said, no doubt Indians are the maximum. In all this, Indians are the maximum. And I used to ask him a question. How many people of Indians or different crime or this and that are in jail in your country? When I used to ask him how many Indians are in jail, and he would say, Swamiji, this is the minimum. Indians are the minimum in jail, nil in most of the places. In one or two places, minimum. Hindus rarely. Now, this when a Hindu goes out of India, he supports that nation, coexists, never creates a problem to anybody, never does he harm anyone, and he lives with them and they adore him, and that's how they flourish. And this person becomes a very good contributor. You see top multinationals, you'll see Indians standing there and taking control of those big companies. This is our contribution, and this comes from our culture. The way in which we were brought up, our culture teaches us to coexist, accommodate everybody, don't trouble anybody, and let's live together. This is the basic Hindu culture. Or Sanatan Dharma, which includes Jain, Buddhist, Sikhs. It comes from that. Now, how much do the common man, let us say in Europe, or from where you come in the United States, appreciate this culture of India, and how much do they know about Ram and Ramayana and the recent development in India to build this beautiful temple? What is a common man, non-Hindu, outside the Hindu diaspora, what do they think about all this?
You want me to answer this, I presume?
Yes, Vamadeva.
Yes. Well, first of all, I have traveled throughout North America, South America, Europe, with various projects, whether to yoga, Ayurveda, Vedanta. Certainly Ram is known in these communities. Outside of that, Ram would not be well known. And overall, I would have to say Americans aren't very aware of other countries in terms of foreign policy. And India is kind of a mystery to them. They do see and honor Indians, but they still have a lot of the old missionary propaganda relative to what Hindus are and what Hindus practice. So basically blank or ignorance. The main problem we have is some of the newspapers in India and the United States are still putting out the colonial message. Many of them had pro-Pakistan message. Remember that Pakistan was an ally of the United States for many years, and the United States is still supporting Pakistan militarily. So that message did not go out, or it was understood that, okay, Hindus are asserting themselves. On one hand, everybody asserts themselves, so let Hindus do that. Others were thinking, why should Hindus assert themselves, and they should be secular. But at the same time, it passed fairly quickly, just as India's nuclear test passed after a few years. And there's a recognition that Hindus have a voice and Hindus have a point of view, and we need to listen to it, or we need to at least recognize it. India is coming up in the world, and the new developments in Ayodhya and Kashmir and the Indo-Pacific show it. And America, that opposed India's nuclear testing, now has supported it. America, that was supporting Pakistan, is in an Indo-Pacific alliance with Bharat. So don't worry about what they say. Go forward, and they will follow after you. And India is the world's oldest civilization. If you recognize people, it's a civilization. It's not the old colonial country. Bharat will rise again, and the world will honor Bharat. Hari Om.
Yeah. Yes, as long as Hindus are the majority, what is called as secularism will exist in India, because Hinduism only supports all faiths. It doesn't swear by one and reject the rest. It accepts everybody. That's very nice. Yeah, it's good that this awareness is out there in the West. How about, are there chances for Hollywood to take a movie on Ramayana? Can the Hindu diaspora work around it?
Well, I think they can. I think there was always this movement more towards animated movies, looking at it that way. But obviously, India has to do more of that. First, there have been television series and all of that. But certainly, because Ramayana is the most popular story through history in the entire world. Even things like Homer, even things like, whatever the Europeans had, are not as widely spread. And Ramayana is the great storybook of Indonesia. It is there throughout Asia. Even the Mughals had to do books on the Ramayana because of its popularity. So it is a global heritage. It is also the greatest heritage in Sanskrit. Even the great Buddhist who wrote the Buddhacharita, Ashwagosha, said Valmiki is the Adi Kavi, and Ramayana is the Adi Kavya that we must all honor. Sanskrit is the oldest and most profound spiritual language. Many people are taking on Sanskrit names, so that should be there. So there should be more depictions of the Ramayana, and certainly in Ayodhya that can be possible. Whether documentaries, whether so many stories, how the movement lasted, the story of Ram. There have been documents, I should say, documentary films like Binoy Bell on how these Hindu deities like Ram are there in Asia and honored there, Japan. So much of that needs to be done on many different levels. And one related point that to your previous comments you made, India is the world's largest democracy, and it is also the dominant or the most successful democracy throughout the world and also in Asia. So if there's democracy in India, it's the Hindu heritage that has brought it about. It is not the leftist communists who destroyed democracy everywhere they went. It is not Pakistan where there's neither democracy nor protection of minorities. But again, let us express and honor Ayodhya in stories and dance. So many dance traditions of Indonesia are Ramayana. So let us bring all these together, and let us make sure eventually that all the countries have films of the Ramayana and are able to look at it as their own as well. Hari Om.
Hari Om. Yes, India. Recently, even the Prime Minister, when he was talking in the Parliament, Narendra Modi ji said that India is the mother of democracy. Democracy took birth in India, because it's not now, it's a very ancient practice which we have. And the principles, basic principles of universal coexistence, all that comes from the basic insights of Hinduism. So this is very nice. Now we can open up the questions. Swatmananda, Anand.
Sure, Swamiji.
Yes,
We'll start with the questions.
Yeah.
So Swamiji, one question that is there always in the minds of people. I know that both of you have clarified it quite deeply, but still the young mind today, which is not aware of the ancient struggle and the challenges, they think that why so much of time, energy, etc. is being spent on a temple there? Why not build a hospital or a school? And why not focus more on developmental issues that the country is facing rather than focusing so much on the culture aspect? So how do we convince a young mind about this, the importance of this?
You want me to answer?
Yes, Swami.
Okay. What is inside manifests outside. Okay. Our thoughts comes out as action. Every action was once a thought. Not all thoughts will become action, but those thoughts which are sustained becomes action. The values of Ram, the ideology, the ideal Ram, the values of Dharma in Ramayana, what each character stood for, all that needs to be understood. If those things are done and people understand that inside, if those changes happen inside, outside things would be different. For example, if people are asking, why not a hospital or why not an orphanage? Why a temple? Please understand, orphanage is there because temples are not maintained correctly. Values are not followed correctly. If values are there, why would we neglect somebody? Drop a person in orphanage. We lived as family, joint family together. We will adopt somebody and bring them up well. These things are not required. These are lost in the cultural values. The temple in Ayodhya, first we have to understand, was built by our forefathers. They built it with a clear vision that it is a seat of culture, prayer, worship, development, inward development, art, music, everything around it. So it was a beautiful concept brought into manifestation. What right does an invader has to come and destroy it? And this question itself is absurd, because you are asking, why should we build? The question should be, why are we building so late? Because somebody has no right to come and destroy. That too, an invader comes and shows his might and destroys something which should be built. It is an insult if it is not being built. If they stay there as what they have destroyed, then those monuments are a shame on us. It's a tower of shame that must be removed. And we must build and rebuild and show this is Dharma. To get back what you have lost is your Dharma. And a temple that way will inspire people to develop themselves as better. Because we go there, we offer, we surrender, we pray, we learn, we stay inspired. What is inside manifests outside. If Ram can get inside us again, imagine how beautiful would our lives be. Ram is called, Tulsidas ji calls him Tapasvi Raja, an austere prince, a prince who is austere, man practicing detachment and moved around. See, in India alone, Shiva is called Tyagaraja. Tyaga, detachment, king of detachment. Now, these are the qualities we would be inspired with, and it is our right. Not just this, like the temples which show some other, structures were built, not reclaiming that. We need to rethink of those temples which are under the, World Heritage Sites. For example, Kailasanath Temple in Aurangabad or Shambhaji Nagar. This Kailasanath Temple is built on a monolithic temple with one single rock. Imagine the effort people must have gone to build it. The temple was built from top to bottom. One rock, a huge temple, massive, a wonder even today. It was built with a purpose to pray. That purpose is defeated. Aurangzeb destroyed the idols inside, and now it is under the World Heritage Site. We need to revive them too, because it was built for worship, not to be as a museum. It was built to worship, to stay inspired. Basic rights. We cannot deny the effort of those people. How many people must have worked to see a hill of single rock hill, and make a temple out of it? That effort has to be recognized. That effort has to be appreciated. And it is our debt that we give it back to them. Pitru Rina it is. That we give it back to them, saying, yes, you made something so magnificent, it was destroyed, and we are bringing it back. It is not a museum, it has to be a temple. That should be the inspiration. We didn't chop the fingers of the people who built something beautiful. You understand? We respect our artisans, we respect our sculptors. There is no history that the temple is built and then they chopped their fingers. No, that happened in Taj Mahal. That's not the way. So these, when you see Kailasanath temple or Ayodhya and many more which are there, it has to be revived. It has to be reclaimed. Why not? And that also should be there. If you ask why not a hospital, then there can be why Bollywood, why cricket, why stadiums, why sports, why so many other things. Let's build hospitals everywhere. When it is convenient, these people become cosmic citizens. And they speak in that tone. Suddenly will become universal. No, that's not the right way. A nation is not built that way. Nation is built with feelings. And Ram is a beautiful feeling. It will only do good to the world. World will benefit. World will learn the values of Ram once we come back again. We were leading, and we were not a dumb nation, please understand. We had the highest GDP in the world 1,000 years ago. We were the first to travel high seas, trade across the world. Coexistence was ours. And we were suffering one hit after another, one hit after another. These people who ask these questions do not know their past. They do not know what is their heritage, from where they have raised, what it was. Imagine even in 10th century, we had around 32% of the world's GDP. The trade of the world, 32% was in India, Bharat. Even in 18th century, we were 22, 23%. It's last 200 years, we went into absolute poverty. Basically, India and China had 50% of the world's GDP. This comes, and please remember, China is not the communist China we are talking about. China had a beautiful civilization, a lovely civilization. We coexisted together, not a single war. 5,000, 7,000 history. India and China has neighbors, two economic giants. Almost 50%, 52% of the world's GDP was between these two nations. Coexisted so beautifully. Each one believed in their dharma, and we lived. How many thousands of years we have? It's one or two wrong moves after the freedom which we made has made this, the relationship with China became estranged. I'm not talking about the Mao and the communist China. I'm talking about the China before that. We were very good neighbors. We were very good friends. So it was progress which came from the internal changes. So not just Ram, other temples also has to come, and along with that, all the ideals have to come inside. What we believe in, that has to come. These people, you sympathize with them. They have this question, just sympathize. They'll flow with us. Because it's an avalanche of flow, recovery, back, revival, renaissance is happening. Join.
Thank you, Swamiji. Yes, Anand, go ahead.
So this is a question for both Vamadevji as well as Swamiji, in line with whatever we've just been hearing. So there is this fear, Swamiji, that India would be declared as a Hindu Rashtra. What is a Hindu Rashtra, and are you in favor of declaring India as a Hindu Rashtra?
Vamadevji, go ahead.
Okay. Well, first of all, the concept of Rashtra in the Hindu tradition is Dharma Rashtra, Ram Raja. And that was also the inspiration of the independence movement. And Mahatma Gandhi also mentioned that. It is a tradition of Dharma. It is a tradition of honoring, and it is a tradition of universal law. And one of the problems we have is that we tend to interpret Hinduism and also India today according to Western theological and political ideas, which are inappropriate. The idea of Bharat is also Bhumi Devi. It's also about honoring the earth. It's an ecological concept. It is not simply a political concept. It is a Vedantic concept, recognizing the Atma, the self in all beings. It is recognizing the law of karma. And no Hindu group is saying we should get rid of the Constitution. We may have to modify certain things, as all constitutions are, or we have to get rid of democracy. It means to honor the Bharatiya tradition overall and to honor the culture, the civilization involved. And it means to remove political ideas that go against Dharma and that cause harm. We can see how that has occurred. We can see where communist rule has caused so much damage to the world. It's also caused damage to India, particularly in Bengal and Kerala, where they've had more power. So Dharma Rashtra and honoring Hindus. Hindus are a majority in this culture. It's interesting to note that under the British and the Islamic rule, Hindus, though a majority, could not have power. They were ruled by minorities. Now we're told that now that India is free and you have a democracy, which is the rule of the majority, Hindus shouldn't rule because it's majoritarianism. Well, then why don't you always let the minority rule? Hindus didn't have power when they weren't politically in power. So let us put this in the proper context. It's not about establishing a Hindu theological rule. There's no Hindu theology of one God and one book only. And it's not about Hindus stopping other people from being respected. It is simply about the Hindu Dharma gaining its respect, gaining at least a few of its sacred sites. I mean, they have tremendous artistic and cultural as well as spiritual values. Ayodhya can be there for all the people who worship Ram throughout the world. Buddhists have honoring of Buddha in their countries. Thailand, even China has huge Buddhist city. The Chinese have, even though they're communist and whatever else they're doing. But why can't India also honor its greatest heroes and devatas, starting with Sri Ram, unites the country, the culture as a message to the world, and restores this concept of Ram Raja and unification, this whole idea of a dharmic civilization. Hari Om.
I would like to add a few more points to what Vamadeva was saying. What is our education system? How much of the original thought of Bharat, which is expressed in the Vedas, which is expressed in the Ramayana, in the Mahabharata, the Puranas, and the vernacular literature, be it Bengal literature, be it Tamil literature, ancient, wonderful literatures. How many of those wonderful thoughts, which actually expand our consciousness, is there in our education system? Today, if we have to bring a thought, a beautiful verse from the Gita, or a nice verse from Ramayana, or Tirukural, if we want to bring it in, you say it is Hindu, it's a Hindu rishi, a Hindu, you are bringing Hinduism. Where would we teach? If we can't teach this in our country, where would we teach? Why are you separating something so noble and beautiful away from the education system? So if they have to learn something, they have to learn outside their school. Now, how many people have time to go outside their school and learn about Hinduism, which is our heritage? We belong to that. We are born in it, and it is absolutely universal, which teaches the world to coexist, which tells everyone to pray for every being in the world. Why this beautiful literature can't come into our schools? Because you call it secular, this can't come in. Harmless literature can't come in. We can't bring in. So these are the things which are obstructing. So when you say Hindu Rashtra, it would only help everyone to be better. It is never a religion over the another. It is not like that. Please remember how Shivaji, when he was in power, treated the Muslims. One of the Mughals, soldier, commander connected to Aurangzeb, their children were kidnapped. I mean, were kept as prisoners of war, young boys in the war. And after 8 years or so, Shivaji is sending them back, saying here on various treaties they had discussion, negotiation. He's sending them back. They thought they will come out as Pandits. Shivaji sent them as Islamic scholars. That is Hindutva, that is Hindu Rashtra. He trained them and he said, you go back. This is your faith, you learn. Go. We are not interested in converting anybody into Hinduism. You have chosen, you go ahead. But if people are trying to cunningly, using canaille methods and wants to hoodwink, entice a population, that has to be objected. That cannot be accepted because that is dangerous to the country. So Hindu Rashtra means the coexisting ideals of Hinduism will remain. No religion would ever be in threat. But what is required predominantly as a culture, which has to be part of the education system, would be brought back. Please remember, this India you talk as developed India was far away from the development what India was in the past. That's why I said the GDP, when you look at economy, we had both. Our concept itself was beautiful. Lakshmi Narayan module we had. Prosperity and spirituality together. A person grew up. Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha was our lifestyle. A person found meaning in life. That was the beautiful knowledge which was in our Gurukulas. That was destroyed. We could not. When an invader comes, you could not run a Gurukula. When the British took over, they banned our Gurukulas. If you had a Gurukula, in spite of it, you were arrested and put in jail. Hindu thought was lost completely from the education. It is removed completely from the education. Hence the confusion. A Hindu does not know his roots. A Hindu does not know his heritage. Hindu does not know his Vedanta. Unless you have a policy which will bring this knowledge into all schools. And this is not converting, not forcing anybody, but for a Hindu has a choice to choose. And the Muslims and the Sikhs and the Buddhists, they can go and study where they want. Nobody's going to stop it. But today you're not able to bring it into the system itself. So this is the idea of Hindu Rashtra, which is a universal way of life. Everybody will coexist absolutely beautifully, and we will not be, reduced. Today you're being reduced, isn't it? Every other country is declaring itself as a, like a Islamic country or a Buddhist country or a Christian country. And the only part of the world Hindus are majority is India. And here you can't keep, and others are working to reduce you. What you do as Hindu Rashtra is wrong, but they will declare themselves as a Buddhist country. I don't see anybody opposing it. Have people come and opposed Buddhist countries? Don't call yourself a Buddhist country. Have people gone opposed to Christian countries? Don't call yourself a Christian country. Call it democratic. Have people gone and opposed Islamic countries? No. What happened to the Hindus in Pakistan? What happened to the Hindus in Bangladesh? They were majority, they were a seizable population. And in an Islamic country, what happened to a Hindu? Please think. His position in Bangladesh, his position in Pakistan. Whereas look how we treated the Muslims in India. How many chief ministers were Muslims? How many presidents were Muslims? And are they not everywhere in all fields? You take the popular field, Bollywood, you take sports, you take any other thing. Equal rights, everybody's doing well. Is this the condition of Hindus in Pakistan and Muslim and in Bangladesh? No, because they adopt Islamic law. But in India, we do. And therefore, you need a better education system. A Hindu has to know. And Hindu has to, otherwise we are shrinking. People are saying, and the Hindu in India is talking, saying, hey, no, why should we be? But other nations have declared, and your population has declined. Is your population harming the world? Are we not eco-friendly? Have we not the first ones to worship nature? Have we not called the rivers as mothers, nature, Prakriti as God? Which policy of Hindu way of life hurts the world? None. And this can't come into the education system. This is the fight, where a Hindu in India cannot have a right to study his own heritage, his own Shastra in a regular school. If you want to study, go outside and study. Why? We are secular. What is your secularism done? Your thought level, the consciousness of human being comes from the Shastric research, Shastric meditation. Therefore, all this has to come, it has to be a Hindu Rashtra, and nobody would be harmed in Hindu Rashtra that way. This is a deliberately created narrative saying others will be sent out. No, we will treat them like Shivaji. We will treat them with respect, absolutely. And that's how we have been treating. It's only when this idea comes up unnecessarily that theological enemies, imagine looking at other religion as a theological enemy. Abrahamic religions do that. That has to be opposed. That is not opposed. And we say all paths are fine. All paths will lead to God. You follow yours, I will follow mine. Let us live together. Our goal is same. And this is being condemned. This is ridiculous. I think, anyway, slowly the awakening is coming. I'm very confident that what we dream will happen, because people of real sadhana, not optics, people who have performed real sadhana, that will fructify in the future. We will see that kind of a Bharat glory coming out, glorious, which the world will like to emulate. Wait and watch.
Thank you, Swamiji. Another question that has just come in for Swamiji is, how do you make Hindus read the Ramayana cover to cover?
It's a very lengthy book. If you take Valmiki Ramayana, 24,000 verses. So you want someone to read cover to cover, they must be first introduced to Ramayana beautifully, inspiringly. And cover to cover is a scholar's job. Let those who have that scholarly eagerness to read, let them read. For others, the basics of it has to be gained. So we don't have to make everybody read, because it's a reading itself is gone and it is written in a language which we are not familiar today. And then you have to depend upon translation. So it's going to be hard if we have to tell somebody to read cover to cover until the person is initiated into the principles of Ramayana. And when you are able to appreciate the science in it, the poetry in it, how history, science and science poetically written, when you have the taste, then you are an addict reading it. But if till that is initiated, people will find it hard. I think the principles of Ramayana is what one should take. And there are so many books coming about Ramayana that this, again, on this point, we need to be very, very careful. The things which come out, so many books, so many people write about Ramayana, who are born some 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, are all writing about Ramayana on their own interpretations. This has to be checked. A Hindu has to understand this clearly. If you write Ramayana or if you write about Mahabharata, it should have roots to the original book, because that is what the author who wrote it had in mind. What Valmiki saw, Valmiki wrote. If you write something that is your interpretation, if it tallies with what Valmiki said, we will accept. If it doesn't tally with Valmiki, that will not be accepted. Again, on Mahabharata also, there are so many books which has come out. Please understand, it is each one's interpretation. If their interpretation matches, tallies with the original, then that is acceptable. If it doesn't tally, that is not acceptable. This awakening is necessary. Otherwise, I do see quite a few people getting confused and they speak. If suppose a very famous actor has done a particular role in a movie, let us say Shivaji Ganeshan in Tamil Nadu acted as Karna. Now the director had few things in mind. He had a film in mind, and therefore he makes, and what the director has said could be inspiring, but that need not be the original thought of what Vyasa had. So we need to see that. We have to get back. I think the scholars in India have to start helping young people who are reading these books to connect to the original, saying, yes, this is in line with it, appreciate it. This is not in line with it, drop it. So reading Ramayana, I think, is a Herculean task right now. And we must try our best to inspire people. I think if it is introduced, like I said, in the schools, slowly, one kand after another, I think people may like it reading that way better. And there will be trained people to explain. So one go page to page, what do you say, cover to cover, is going to be difficult. Maybe, like we have to adopt other methods, picking up something through a game, probably through a sport, through a movie, through a dance. We can bring the concepts, beautiful original concepts of Ramayana to inspire people. Reading is not the only way. There are other ways to learn.
Thank you, Swamiji. Just a last question, maybe. I think we don't have much time, but we'll just slide in this question for Vamadevji, because he touched upon this topic earlier as well. How is Hindu cultural resurgence different from Hindu fundamentalism, and will it not endanger secularism?
Yes, it's very interesting. This has been debated for some time. First of all, no one's ever defined what Hindu fundamentalism is. There's no Hindu fundamentalism of one God, one book, converting the world. All that in the West we think about as fundamentalism doesn't exist in the Hindu Dharma. Hindu Dharma is very open, has many philosophies, gurus, devatas, approaches to the divine. Sometimes I like to say there's more religions inside of Hinduism than outside of it. It has preserved the spiritual aspiration of humanity at all different levels. And what does secularism mean? Secularism was meant to be not considering religion. In India, secularism means discrimination against Hindus. What is this Hindu fundamentalism? Hindus can't even run their own temples in most of India. Hinduism is not recognized or even taught or even regarded as a historical factor, as Swamiji was saying, in the textbooks that students read. There is no Hindu Sharia or one law that all Hindus follow. There's nothing that could be called fundamentalism. And a lot of the secularism is trying to impose a lot of leftist ideologies in India that are not dharmic or not spiritual at all. And Indian secularism can accept dynasty, but it can't accept political dynasty, it can accept, but India's own heritage, it has trouble with accepting. So let us get rid of these myths, study what Hindu Dharma is, first of all, before you talk about Hindu fundamentalism, Hindu non-fundamentalism. If you want to understand Hinduism, first study Vedanta, Gita, Upanishads, even Vedas. What does Vedas say? Purusha Vedam Sarvam. There's one Purusha in everything. Look at the Mahavakyas of the Upanishads. Aham Brahmasmi, Sarvam Kalvidam Brahma. This is Hinduism. Don't look at Western theology. What is this one God of Hinduism? Ram, Krishna, Shiva, and yet all these devatas, you can share common names, share ultimate reality. So let's put this in the proper perspective, and that is to honor the Sanatana Dharma and the universal tradition, the universal Dharma. Hari Om.
Thank you, Vamadevji. Just one last question. many people would like to know that what is it that inspires the non-Hindus to come into Hinduism? And like you have taken up so deeply to the Hindu culture, what is that which makes them come and look forward to this? Especially
Yes.
when that much exposure may not be there for them as it is there to some of them people here.
Yes, several things. One is the great Hindu gurus they come to learn about. Ramana Maharshi, Sri Aurobindo, Anandamoy Ma, Ramakrishna, Vivekananda, Chinmayananda. We don't have those figures in the West. Even the last 2,000 years, it's hard to find anybody like that coming out. So these teachers, many have come to the West. Yogananda lived in the West. The inspiration of those teachers, unbelievable. And then the basic Hindu philosophy, Vedanta, self-realization, not belief in one God going to heaven or hell, higher states of consciousness. Sadhana, the Hindu understanding of consciousness, totally transcends even modern science today. Universal consciousness, higher lokas, realms beyond the physical. So the philosophy, karma and rebirth rather than sin and salvation. So the Hindu philosophy, the yoga Vedanta, and the practices, mantra, pranayama, so many different forms of meditation. Before the Hindu gurus came to the West, people didn't know what meditation or mantra was. Now they're all trying to create their own forms in order to stay relevant. Hindu teachings, Ayurveda, Jyotish, Indian music and dance, Sanskrit. The Hindu culture totally is much larger than the Western culture, including religious and non-religious and continuity. So all these factors inspire people if they are given exposure to it, visiting the Hindu temples, seeing what they actually do, seeing the scriptures. Hindu literature is larger than anything else in the world. Ramayana is one example. Mahabharata is one example. So all these things, if people are given an open exposure to the Hindu Dharma, it will be taken up in a big way. And that is what is necessary. And for Hindus, as Swami Chinmayananda said, for Hindus to become Hindus, to honor the Sanatana Dharma, to teach the Vedanta with confidence, with depth, which is what Chinmaya mission does, a great example for Hindus everywhere, honoring the devotion, the bhakti, all the paths of yoga. Art, music, dance can all be yoga. It's not just about, one exclusive belief or another. So these are some of the things, and this wave of Sanatana Dharma will continue to grow and will expand itself throughout the world again, as it had been in ancient times and even up to recent centuries. Hari Om.
Thank you, Vamadevji. Thank you, Swamiji. Very insightful, your talks as well as the question answer session. Anant, please carry forward.
1 minute.
Yes,
Vamadevji, thank you so much for connecting with us from Mexico. I know it's early morning for you there. Thank you so much. Namaskar. Yeah, Anand.
Thank you, Vamadevji. Thank you, Swamiji. Thank you for the wonderful speech and, more importantly, the discussion. I think we are not doubtful now about being resurgent in our attitudes, as well as having known the reason for the Ram Mandir, take this to the next planes. So thank you so much to both the speakers. Thank you, Swamiji. Thank you, Vamadevji. We will now have a couple of announcements before the closing prayer. So like you all know, I think the SiyaRam Mandir is coming up, and your help towards this wonderful temple is going to mean a lot to our culture, as we just heard. So your help in any way to the Ram Mandir is going to be very critical in taking this to the next level. So please do contribute in whichever way, economic or otherwise. The account details for the contribution can be seen in the chat box. Please do log in and please do check out and contribute all your might.
One thing we should just remember that whatever we contribute is not just for the temple of Bhagwan Ram here. It is also for the whole Ayodhya to be made as the cultural capital of the world, as well as there are many more temples that we need to reclaim. It could be used for, so it would be meant for good use. So do go ahead and make your contribution. It is our seva. We have got an opportunity.
Tomorrow we have some exciting programs lined up, especially for the younger ones. For the 9 to 12 years, we have a program titled Ramayana in the 21st Century by Sri Yashodeep Diodhar, who runs the 21 Notes Ramayana. So to the earlier question about how can it be read cover to cover, I think Sri Yashodeep ji has done a wonderful job of making it really, really concise, sticking to the original. So please do come and join us for that session tomorrow between 11 a.m. and 12:30 p.m. At the same time, we also have life lessons from Ramayana by Sri Shantanu Gupta ji. For those who don't know about Shantanu Gupta ji, he runs the Ramayana school, a very, very interesting and engaging speaker. I've attended a couple of his sessions as well. So please do make use of this opportunity to continue onto this spiritual sadhana, Ramayana in the 21st century for 9 to 12 years, and life lessons from the Ramayana for 13 to 28 years. So those are the two programs lined up for tomorrow. Please do join. Now we will go in for the closing prayer. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamadachyate Purnasya Purnamadhaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om.
Hari Om, everybody.
Hari Om, everyone.
I'm taking a leave.
Hari
Hari Om,
Om.
Hari Om, Hari Om.
Hari Om Vamadeva ji. Thank you so much.
Hari Om.